Let's do it. Let's do it. Okay, we're I'm gonna leave that in. I don't edit these.
That's great.
So if you're watching this, whatever, you just got some random things of me talking while we got started. That's fine. I'm Jason Stone, and I've been enjoying interviewing different Logos users on my YouTube channel just for fun, and for me to learn some new things myself. And it's like really cool to jump into the sea of people who are using the software, and then just walk through how they use it, because they just show me all kinds of different things. I've been using the software for quite some time, like since 2011, maybe 10. And yeah, I just like, we talked about clippings the other day, and so that was something new. I'm babbling, but my point is, these interviews are really helpful for me to get in and learn something new. We're going to get into it today with Anthony. Anthony's going to say hello in a second, and he's going to eventually be walking through his software, like a few things that he'd like to show. I think the focus will be Second Temple Judaism, or the Intertestamental Period, and like what that period of time enlightens in biblical study across testaments. That was a mouthful. I didn't breathe. But we will be unpacking that in a second. Before we get rolling, Anthony, can you tell us a little bit about your context, how you use Logos, like when you're using it, what you're using it for, and then, well, I was about to say when you're not teaching as a substitute teacher. So just give myself and others who are going to be watching this replay some context about how you use it and what you'll be using it for.
Great. Yeah, thanks for having me. So I've used the Logos Bible software for, I think, the better part of about 14 years now. And I bought my first package at the beginning of seminary at Knox Theological Seminary. Logos had a big partnership. I don't know if anybody remembers that, with Knox Theological Seminary. I think they're still affiliated. But anyway, yeah, I did my seminary degree out at Knox, and they required Logos. And so I had to sell literally hundreds of books that I had collected over the years and convert them all into digital, because I loved Logos so much after I got my first gold package. I think it was Logos 4 Gold. And so I used it a lot in the seminary context, just, dealing with the Greek and the Hebrew and, all that theological and exegetical work that you do in seminary. And then that obviously transitioned into ministry. So I'm a pastor of a church. At the time I was a youth pastor, but still really there was an expectation in our context of like careful exegesis, even for youth ministry and kids ministry and stuff like that. So something I really appreciated about those years is it prepared me to be a senior pastor. And so now I pastor a church in Palmdale, California. So it's called Palmdale Church appropriately. And I do a lot of teaching in the church context. So preaching virtually every Sunday. One unique thing, so we're Southern Baptist.
Wait,
but
just to clarify, are you teaching virtually every Sunday or virtually teaching every Sunday?
Virtually is probably not technically the most accurate word to use there, especially not in this day and age. So no, I teach face-to-face visually. We're one of those anti-live stream churches. So
nice.
We don't
you don't
teach
have an
virtually.
Online campus.
No, we don't have an online campus. So we'll post our sermons. We do online staff meetings though, so that saves our church staff a little bit of travel time. So, but yeah, no. So I teach just about, I'll say, every Sunday, and yeah, we're Southern Baptist, so we're low church, but we are also, as far as Baptists go, we're kind of high church. So I use my Logos a lot to look through. Not just contemporary, but ancient liturgies and medieval liturgies and things like that as I design our services. And so we have a liturgical structure to our service that Logos helps me with a lot, because there's a lot of those types of resources. A lot of those types of resources come very inexpensively with different packages, and that's been really helpful because they're classical and so they don't cost anybody anything. Yeah, I teach several small groups, and then so I've done tons of Bible teaching through the almost 9 years that I've been at Palmdale Church, and then through over a decade of youth ministry before that. Now I've started, well, I haven't started now, but in the last couple of years, I've really been focusing a lot on writing. And so got a couple books out there that, and I use Logos really daily for that. That's kind of part of my morning routine. Is early in the morning before everybody's up, I tend to do a lot of my writing, and so I've got my Logos open on my laptop and sitting in the living room on the couch and cranking away at various writing projects, whether that be articles on my website or some of the books that I put out over the last couple of years. So that's primarily how I'm using Logos.
Can you say something to the books that you've published? Like, I don't know, what are the topics? I didn't have a chance to look into them like I should have done. Like a great, I don't know.
I've written a lot of books actually, and published several of them. Although most of my earlier ones, and this is a danger, any writers out there, don't do what I did. I pulled most of the books that I've written out of publication because you grow. And so, but I'm never doing that again. I've committed to that. So I published a book last year called The Watchers and the Holy Ones, an evangelical reading of First Enoch, the Book of the Watchers. And what it is it's a you could call it a paraphrase of the Enoch text, using the different resources that are out there. So there's several different good commentaries on First Enoch, and a couple of good translations. But if you know anything about Enoch, there's lots of different text traditions, and none of them are either not ancient or they're not complete. And so it's a lot of work to go through and sort of recraft the narrative. And so it's sort of a reader's version geared towards an evangelical audience that's typically opposed to some of the Second Temple literature like First Enoch. And so it's just sort of an introduction to see how it can be helpful to understand First Enoch, even though as Protestants, we tend to have a conviction that it is not scripture. And so that's been really well received by a lot of audiences. And so I've really enjoyed that work. And so that was published in 23. And then just this summer, I released a book called The Gospel is Bigger Than You Think. And it's sort of an analysis of it's trying to be a practical book, honestly, but it's sort of an analysis of gospel motifs and atonement theories that have existed throughout history. And it's taking everything within sort of the Orthodox camp, lower O Orthodox camp, just sort of like right theology camps, and demonstrating potential ways that the different atonement theories and gospel motifs work together rather than create opposition between, theological traditions and denominations. And so that book has also been really well received. Not everybody agrees with every chapter in it, and that's okay. That's how we read books. We read it to grow, and sometimes you say, yeah, I like this, I don't like that. But certainly when I'm talking about traditions that have historically divided over atonement theories, not everybody wants to come together, but then a lot of people have said, yeah, I can see how these can work together. And so that's been a great resource also. I think it also has a practical bent to it of, if we understand the gospel on a larger scale, and by the gospel, I mean the story of Christ's work on a larger scale, and see what he accomplished according to sort of the Old Testament shadows that come through into the New Testament theology, then I think we do better at discipling people and training them for gospel work of their own and for a sustaining faith. That's a pattern that I've seen in 20 years of ministry, is just so many people seem to love the gospel when they come into the church, and you can't help it. Sometimes they fade away. And I just have a burden to see that happen less and less. And I think that a more robust look at the gospel could be the answer to that. So that's sort of the thesis of the book. Yeah.
Awesome. I'll link those up in the video, of course,
Cool.
description down below. And then I'll also add your website so folks can go check out articles that you're writing and publishing over on your website.
Yeah, the website also has blog posts, and every now and then I make a cheesy YouTube video. They're not as good as yours, but I throw those up there also.
I know, this is like prime content right here.
It's pretty good.
I just hope it's helpful. That's all. But as you're starting to share your screen, I did have one more question. Like, what motivated you to write your book on the gospel? Because it sounds like with your ministry context, and then how you jump from we can be unified in atonement or in the gospel idea, like to walk together, essentially. Like, it seems like there was a lot of like maybe stuff happening in ministry, or you had conversations with someone that was like, I don't buy into this particular thing, so I'm going to leave the church. I don't even know, but maybe there was some things. What's the context to that book?
I was really taught as a child that to think about Christianity more broadly. So as a child, we were members of an EV Free Church, and my grandfather's family is Catholic. My grandmother's family is Mormon, and we understood that there were sort of dividing lines there that, you know, caused some problems. And then one of the like a family friends, like another family that was friends with our family, they were Greek Orthodox. And so there was a lot of influence of different theological traditions, Catholicism, Orthodoxy, and Mormonism. And yet we were going to a Protestant church, you know, born again Christians out of a Protestant church, you know, low church Baptist type of environment. And then we moved, and I really grew up in a Protestant, you know, kind of a Bible church type of setting, and kind of Baptist, you know, something like that, but independent. And then when I went to Bible school, there wasn't a lot of options online, and there was nothing in our area. So we're kind of out in the boonies in the, you know, northern LA County in the desert. And so there was nowhere good for me to go to Bible college without moving, but I had a ministry that I was loving being a part of. And so I didn't want to move. So I was looking online, ended up at a school that was Presbyterian, had a great program I liked. And that got me into the Reformed world a bit. And so much enjoyed that I ended up going to Knox Theological Seminary, which is also Reformed Presbyterian affiliated. And so a lot of broad exposure. Questions I had about Reformed theology led me into Remonstrance theology, and to looking at just a lot of different, looking at the Methodist and Wesleyan movements and things like that. And eventually has led me into looking into Eastern Orthodoxy. I'm not interested in converting to Eastern Orthodoxy. What I'm interested in there is understanding the church fathers better, and how we get to a, what I might call a sacramental Protestant faith today. And so I think that has existed in some of the earlier Protestant traditions and has been lost in some of the more recent. And so I have a heart for sort of understanding the way the early church did things and why it was effective, and to see how those apply today. So just a real broad theological perspective, honestly.
Very broad.
And
at the start, it sounded like you were teeing up a joke, like Eastern Orthodox and Reformed and Protestant, and Catholic walk into a Starbucks or something. I don't know.
Right. I know. And you can't make this stuff up. Like it just has to happen organically. That's just, I didn't ever sit down and say, I want to understand everybody's theology, you know, and, you know, I haven't studied everything. I haven't studied, you know, a lot of the Lutheran theology very well. And like, so there's pockets and corners that I haven't really got into as much as maybe I could have. But anyway, I'll go ahead and share my screen. That's what gave me a heart for it is that that's funny. We tested this earlier and it just told me I can't share my screen.
Well, if you need to hop out for a moment, that's no problem. If you
Let me just try it one more time.
Yeah.
There we go. And share. Okay, there we go. So yeah, so I think that's what's led me sort of into this, like this way of thinking. And honestly, when it comes to Christians, I think, you know, even though we understand that there's theological dividing lines, we're more alike than we're different. And you know, with the ones that are like-minded on, you know, historic church or the orthodoxy, at least, I think it's worthwhile to see what there is in the other camps, so to speak. So yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna kind of frame today's conversation just a little bit as we get started, because I know there's like maybe three things based on the chat we had prior to getting rolling here, that there are maybe three things that we want to talk about. And one was, I mean, you're showing your card just a little bit here. That's fine. No, it's okay. Second, or the intertestamental time, that period of time between the Old Testament and the New Testament, and how those two shape one another in interpretation, and how you can use Logos to research that. And then my hope is that we can also get into something that you can't quite explain, but you use it all the time, is power lookup. And so we'll talk about that. We'll unpack what in the world it is and how it works together. But was there anything else that you wanted to talk about as you're sharing your screen?
I think that's good. We mentioned this. I mentioned I'm a substitute teacher, and this is my program scaling I normally use. And I loved that they added program scaling to the kebab button up here. I'm not sure everybody calls it that, but that's what I call it, because when I'm in a classroom and I want to be doing some research, but I need to be keeping my eye on the class, I love to come up here and go from my 80% up to my 150% without having to actually go deep into the settings like you used to. I have no idea when that changed, but I love that it did. So yeah, that's my one thing I just wanted to show. So then that brings everything nice and big where I can read it from a distance. So
Love it.
yep.
Well, where do you want to start today? You're in the hot seat.
I thought because you'd asked me like what could I talk about, and Logos does a million things, but I think obviously people are interested in the AI, and I spend a lot of time in some internet groups where AI is talked about and how is it useful and how is it helpful. And I think there's ways that it's extremely unhelpful. And I mean, if you don't mind, I think we could actually demonstrate one of those ways. If we were to come over here and just say you wanted to study, let's just say the divinity of Christ, you could go to your all search and notice I have my little AI button
Smart
here.
search.
Yeah, it's on the smart search, and that tells you that it's going to use your AI credits. And I could just type in the divinity of Christ right there and hit enter, and it's going to go through literally everything in the Logos database, I believe. And one of the really cool things that it'll do is it'll give you this synopsis right here, which can be extremely helpful. And it points you to a couple of different works, and it gives you a synopsis of what the divinity of Christ is about. And then it'll give you actual results that you can go through. Now, one of the things that I initially realized was I'd come through here, and you can even get summaries of these little articles using AI, which can be really helpful, even on the ones that have the padlock. But I was finding myself wanting to get deeper into those. I don't think AI, and I love that Logos works this way. The AI doesn't supplement your own reading. It brings you to the right places. I've got, what do I have in here? Like over 15,000 resources in my library at this point. And I can't always find with the traditional search tools everything that I'm looking for. And the AI does a great job of digging into some of the neat corners of your library and finding you some of those results. But then if they're all locked, what help is that? And unless I want to buy some books, which occasionally I do. So what I discovered, and again, like I said offline with you, I'm sure 100,000 other people are doing the same thing, but I like to use my collections. And so collections, is a way of getting a segment of your library. And then you can work with that segment in a lot of different ways. You can use it in all of your guides, your passage guide, your theology guide. And more recently, and that's traditional to Logos to use the guides. And that's what I've been doing for eons. But one thing that is very cool is that it lets you take that into your search features. So right here, I've got a collection of Second Temple literature, and these are handpicked. I don't have any rule in here. So these are all handpicked texts. Some of them are analytical, some of them are commentary, some of them are just the source text, like this Joseph and Asenath right here is just the source text. And then if I come over to my books section, I can actually select the default is your books. And then I can do open books, which can be really helpful. Like if I've got a bunch of books open because I'm researching a lot of different stuff, to be able to then search all of those open books can be really helpful sometimes. And then you can search your print library, whatever, right? Personal books. But I like to go down to collections, and then I can come down and find Second Temple literature, which is that collection I made. And now I can, in a sense, what I'm doing is I'm going to the Second Temple period between the rebuilding of the temple and Ezra and Nehemiah's day, and the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. And that's largely what I've got here in this Second Temple period. And let's not forget that the New Testament is Second Temple literature, although I keep it out of this collection, but let's not forget that, because it's going to inform it, right? And then I can make searches. And I like to ask, people have found this out with Chat GPT, that the more specific you can ask it a question, write it a paragraph length prompt, then the better answer it gives. But Chat GPT doesn't have access to your books and Logos, right? What I'm actually finding is that you can be too simple. Like if I just put Divine Messiah It's not really going to get it at my point in the same way as if I give it a full question, but I definitely don't want a paragraph in here. If I put a paragraph, it shapes too much what the results are going to be. And a lot of times it'll tell you, well, none of the books in your collection really addressed that issue. So if you go too specific, especially when you're working in a collection, that can be a problem. So I like something like this. Did the Second Temple Jews expect a divine Messiah? I wrote an article on the divinity on the expectations of a divine Messiah on my website recently. And so this is just an example of something that I used recently. So if I hit enter, then it gives me this synopsis here, just like when I did an all search. And I'll often take and I don't care too much about that synopsis right now. So I'm just going to take and I'm going to just drop this in a note, just so I have it. Because what it's doing is it's trying to think through what types of things might have, I might be interested in. But then I'm going to jump down here to the results, because now every one of these results, there's not going to be a lock on any of them because it's searching things that are actually in my library. And so now I can go to every one of these and do some further research. And there's some cool stuff. So, I keep Michael Heiser's Reversing Herman because it relies heavily on Second Temple literature. So I keep that right there, right in this collection. And it'll definitely jump to some of those more contemporary resources. But I only have to go 3 down, and now I've got an excerpt from First Maccabees, and this is the type of stuff I'm really looking for. I do something that I often call like biblical theological preaching or biblical theological writing. I'm not writing a biblical theology, but I'm writing from the perspective of the biblical theology. Where I find in pastoral circles, most of the pastors are writing from the perspective of the systematic theology. I'm trying to do something that's more from the biblical theological perspective. And that's not a criticism of systematic theology. I just think the church has been used to that for so long that it brings a fresh perspective. So I'm sort of writing from the perspective of the biblical theology and wanting to see the cohesion between the testaments and things like that. And that's something fresh that's not being done a whole lot. So you do have your summarize button here where I can grab a summary. Let's say I want to grab this summary here. And I can grab that and copy that over if I want to into my notes. Maybe I'll put it in a bullet point, or something like that. And then I'll often, and obviously I'm doing this fast, I'll often open that resource up. I love that it gives you a highlight of the part it's thinking about. And like I said, what I love about the AI and Logos is it doesn't replace your reading. So now
Can you clarify that? The highlighted portion there, you didn't highlight that?
No.
I might be missing that.
No. So in fact, I'm not 100% sure I've ever opened this book. I'm looking at the cover and I don't actually recognize it. Although it is just that tiny little icon, but no, I believe that is because every time one of these I open is going to open up to a highlight. In this case, it only highlighted the 2 right there.
Oh, I see. So that's okay.
Now that you mention it, I haven't looked this up, but
yeah.
I think it's highlighting the portion that it wants you to read. I think so. So now I want to look that up and make sure. But
we'll check it out.
That's been my assumption. So because it always opens to a highlighted. Let's grab another one. Yeah, see, it's always opening to a highlighted section. And so
stages. Yeah, that's the excerpt that it pulled into your search results. Okay, cool.
Yeah, the eschatological temple. So that's what it's doing, and it's pointing you to the right spot. And so I'm always going to go back to a major heading, and I'm going to start reading from there. So for me, I'm going to go back here. This is the beginning of the chapter, and I'm going to read from this perspective. Now, in this case, this is a analysis of these passages, not so much the passages themselves. So I'm going to be watching for quotes, and then I'll be going to my Apocrypha and looking up those quotes within the context of First and Second Maccabees, wherever they come up, if it's something that I think I'm interested in for whatever it is that I'm working on. So that's kind of what I do, and then I organize my stuff in a notes doc. And then as an author, I go back and forth. Sometimes I write in Word, sometimes I write in Google Docs, sometimes I write in a sermon document. And the writing in the sermon document, I'm not going to demonstrate that, but that's helpful because if I write in a sermon document, then then I can highlight over like different passage descriptions and stuff like that. So it's just, and those obviously link to my Bible or to my Apocrypha internally. And so they're really helpful from that perspective to get those internalized links. And then when I want to format it to send to editing or something like that, then I'm going to go and copy it over to Microsoft Word or something like that. The one thing, if I can trash talk a little bit, I don't know if I'm allowed to, but yeah. So the one thing I wish that Logos, anybody who works for Logos that's listening, right? Write this down. I've been suggesting this in the forums for eons. Use the Grammarly API, right? It exists. We can put Grammarly into Logos, and I think that so I pay for a subscription to Grammarly because I love it, and it's just so helpful. So that's why I will sometimes use Word or Google Docs, because it works really nicely with Grammarly. So usually
are you saying right here, like in the search box, put in some Grammarly API integration?
Oh, maybe not there. That would be annoying. But like,
you mean in notes?
Correct, but in my notes, in my sermon documents, right? It's really helpful. Like, especially like if I'm writing a sermon while I'm sitting in a class of teenagers, I need it to tell me I misspelled a word or stated something wrong.
Well, there is I remember in the feedback site, you said that you've been active there. In the feedback site, there's a paper builder, just like there's a sermon builder, or sermon manager, sermon builder. But there's a paper builder suggestion. And so I feel like all that is in the same space. So you could go check that out and upload that or whatever for sure. But okay, cool. This is great. I have an idea. I have a question now. I just was thinking about feedback and ideas. But I have a question. So what's like a general, like you said you handpicked your collection and built that out. What are a couple like must-have? I don't study Second Temple Judaism or Intertestamental Period, like not the commentaries like per book, or the manuscripts themselves. What are there like surveys that you'd recommend that people own or something like that? A general reference resource of some kind?
Well, unfortunately, my favorite one is not available in Logos.
Is it not?
No, it's Stephen DeYoung, who is an Orthodox author. I think he's Greek Orthodox or Antiochian Orthodox, but Dr. Father Stephen DeYoung, anyway, to give him the credit, wrote a book called The Apocrypha that is phenomenal, a phenomenal survey of not just the actual apocryphal books, the ones that we traditionally consider apocrypha, but of probably all of the most significant works of the Second Temple period. And it's just an incredible resource. So a lot of it's published by Ancient Faith Ministries. So my guess is someday it'll pop up in there, and I'll buy it. I have it in print currently. So, but that's one of the ones. If you want something in Logos, a lot of this is piecemealed, but this one right here, the commentary on the Holy Scriptures and Apocrypha. It is a commentary, but it's sort of a little bit shorter. It's the Lang's commentary series. It's got good material, and then there's another one. There's some like I think it's the Bible background commentary. This volume of the AAC on the Apocrypha is good. The Ancient Commentary or ACCS series, Ancient Christian Commentary on Scripture. This one is really good on the Apocrypha, but again, it's not going to have everything. It is a commentary. I know you said not a commentary, but there really isn't a whole lot out there that's like that. That's great. So books that engage with it a lot: Reversing Herman, The Watchers in Jewish and Christian Traditions. Those both engage with it a lot. And other than that, this one right here, Judaism of the Second Temple Period, is a fairly good resource. And I can't remember who the publisher is offhand, but it's David Flusser and Azan Yadin. And it really gives us a look at like the differences between, we make assumptions about what Judaism was like based on the Pharisees, for example. But the Pharisees were just like kind of one cult of, if I can use that word technically, not in a derogatory way, the Pharisees were one cult of Judaism, and that developed by Jesus' day, but are not really quintessential of the theology of the period at large. And so a book like this that helps us to engage with the apocryphal books, a lot of that other Second Temple literature, and understand the way that theology was developed in the Jewish communities based on the experience of the Israelites and the documents of the Israelites, what we call the Old Testament, I think can be really helpful. This is a monograph though, so it's going to be it's structured like a history, and it'd probably be great to sit down and read. But I guess the power of Logos is that I can also, using AI or other search mechanisms, I can search it and find what I'm looking for too. So it could be really helpful. But that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks. Okay, cool. Do you have a minute for? Well, first off, anything else there? But if not, do you have a minute for Power Lookup or no?
Yeah, I've got time. One quick thing I would show. So
Yeah.
I've got a ton of collections. I use them prolifically. But the other thing I do is I go to the church fathers a lot. So I will often take, and so here's my church fathers collection. This one has a rule that I built it with, and then one of my books didn't show up, so I added it. But I will often take my same question and then come over here and change it to the church fathers under the expectation that the church fathers, being closer to the Second Temple period than I am, should probably have some insights. And so then I can look that up and get some similar information. And so I often will do that and look at not just the Second Temple documents, but the church fathers, and compare that to what I'm already understanding from the Old Testament and the New Testament before I start to structure an argument. So yeah, I don't need to say much more. It's the same process. But
well, I have one more thing based on some other interviews that I've had, and immediately people go, "Oh my gosh, can I how do I build that collection or have access to that collection?" Have you shared these publicly, or would you be willing to?
Yeah, I could share these collections.
Okay,
absolutely.
cool.
How do I do that?
It's just right in there. If you click share,
oh, right on.
and then public, that's it. Then it's shared, and so people can find these. Do you know how to find shared collections? If not, we could run through that.
I'd love to know how to do that.
If you go to your documents pane, like you're at the very top across, go in there and then click on public instead of yours.
Oh, nice. When did this get added?
A while, some time ago.
Yeah.
And then the resource collection is right there there's like 1,700 of them. Nice. And then at the very top, I think you can even type in Second Temple, or you could type in Church Fathers and see if there's any other ones, but doesn't look like it. Or it's it's terribly slow. But anyways, there you go.
Yeah,
there's
Church Fathers in English. Oh, that's rad. So yeah, so like other people have put those in there. I think this is probably the one I just added. Yeah, today.
And then your name would be attributed in there somewhere. Yep. There you go, author.
There you go.
So yeah, you've got a shared one in the public. But yeah, so anybody could get access to it this way, if they wanted to, and then you could even do some shopping and see if there's a collection in there that's maybe helpful to you. But
yeah, that's rad. Okay.
We'll close with Power Lookup real quick, because this is just like, no wonder you like it, because you said it real fast when you were talking about your layout there. You were like, I just skim through here and I check out the verses, and maybe I jump over to Maccabees and maybe something else. But what Power Lookup does is it essentially just like shows you all the verses that are being referenced in the resource that you're reading, or it shows you all of the resources that are being referenced in, there you go. So like your scaling is massive right now, so it's hard probably to keep up with.
Yeah.
But let's do this real quick. Go to dictionary NTB. What is that? DNTB.
DNTB.
Yeah, do that, and then do link set real quick on that one. Right down below it, there's like a little chain link.
Oh, it's right there. I'm not used to it. All the buttons have moved. So so let's put that on there.
Do that, and then do the same for Power Lookup real quick. Just do link set A. All right. Okay. So now if you scroll through this resource right here, then there you go. You've got Josephus Antiquities. You've got things that are being highlighted are being explained over on the far right is what's happening.
Yep. So that's what I understand it to be doing. I just like not always sure like where it's all coming from.
Yeah.
But I love it because it tends to follow. I've never linked it before, but it tends to follow whatever I'm clicked in.
Yeah, it looked like
Yeah.
before we switched out it to A, you had it set default to follow, which is nice also. So like whatever resource you're scrubbing through, it'll follow along in that resource. But you
Mhm.
can go back and fix it if you prefer that. It's all
Oh
good.
no,
But
it's all good.
that's awesome. I feel like we've covered quite a bit. I know that there will be some comments about like what resources you recommend further, and so we'll see if we get into that afterwards in the comments. But I think we talked through collections a little bit and how you research the Second Temple Judaism
Mhm.
or the Intertestamental Period there, and then we talked a little bit about Power Lookup and what else did we cover? That's about it.
Yeah, I
Your
think that's
layout.
about it.
Yeah.
I tend to be long-winded, so I
No, it's
think
all
I
good.
took the time on that.
It's good stuff.
Yeah,
This is also something we haven't talked about in the interviews that I've had. So
very cool.
as we wrap up, I will just close by saying that all the links we talked about are going to be in the video. So be sure to go check those out. And Anthony, I really appreciate that the time. This has been insightful for me also. This is, like I said, not a topic that I like jump into all that often. And like you said, this isn't something that churches really open up all that often. And so this has been good and encouraging for me as well. So I hope it is for others who catch the replay. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. All right. I will wrap us up. And until the next interview, thanks everybody.
All right, God bless.